Hello, my name is JD and welcome to the Idiots. Today is another episode of my collection. Today's collection is the Highlanders.
There can be only one.
Now, the reason why I'm doing the collection now is because I have a pretty solid collection of what there is, but it's not complete and I plan to revisit it in a few years from now. Now, because it is such a small collection, I'm actually going to end it with a ranking video of the collection. Now, I'm deciding right now, should I do in the seasons or as the box set? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the box set as a whole and rank it that way. So the first one on my list is the 30th anniversary Highlander original from 1986, and it's on the Blu-ray edition. Now, the reason why I bought this, obviously, you gotta own the first one if you're gonna own any of them. The basic story is you got Connor McLeod, and you get to see his flashback of how he learned what it was to be immortal, and while being hunted by a man known as the Kurgan. And the movie's climax is at the Gathering, which what they didn't know would end up spawning a franchise, so it actually has a book ending in the first movie, and they had to go through quite the troubles to try and write sequels for it. All they had to do was just say it wasn't over yet. Alright, so Highlander 2 The Quickening came out in 1991, and it was the first Highlander film I ever saw. I was about, maybe 10 years old when I first saw it, back in like 2003, 2001 maybe. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, the only reason why I sat down and watched it is because it was the guy who played Raiden. And for so long, Christopher Lambert was Raiden to me. They've written back Sean Connery in this movie in a really stupid way. I actually re-edited the movie to try and make it make more sense. And when I had edited it, it went from a 95-minute movie down to a 40-minute movie. Because I completely edited out Sean Connery and all the alien stuff to try and make it as much of a straightforward story as I did, and 40 minutes is what I got out of it. But a lot of people consider this to be the worst film, and you'll see where I stand with that later on. On VHS, it's the only one I own on VHS. It is Highlander: The Gathering. So the first episode, the pilot episode of the Highlander series. This is awesome. It has at the time, it was the first time we ever got to see Connor and Duncan in the same episode together, or same video together. It's basically a torch passing episode, and it was a pretty solid pilot. Now, this copy that I own is actually one that's not meant for renting. It's one that they give to video stores to sample and watch to decide if they wanted to get a supply of the movies. Basically, that is what this is. So it's actually not meant for renting. And by the way, renting is something you used to do at a video store, and that's when you had to go into a store to pick a movie that you wanted. And in my opinion, I actually found it easier to pick a movie in a video store than I do on Netflix. Alright, the complete box set of the Highlander series. This is great. It's probably one of the best things to come out of Highlander, and the reason why is just because the stories and the episodes, and there's such an in-depth look at the character of Duncan MacLeod and how he became the man he was. And you get a full backstory. It's like, Christopher Lambert, he had the 4 movies to tell his story, where he has, 6 seasons to tell his. So obviously his story is a lot more detailed than what Connor's is. But it's honestly one of my favorite TV shows ever. That actually consists of a story, that is. Highlander 3, The Final Dimension, or The Sorcerer. It had a lot of names. Of the Highlander sequels, this is probably the best one. And the reason why is because they're not aliens, for one, and they actually got something of a decent story to tell about Connor McLeod. And it is worth owning in your collection, in my opinion, if you're a fan of the first Highlander film. This is one to buy. 2000's Highlander Endgame. That is the 4th sequel in the series, and it's the first feature film of Duncan and Connor. It's Connor McLeod's, 4th outing on the big screen, but it is Duncan's first and sadly only time he was ever on the big screen. It is actually a pretty solid movie. It does make my top 3 of just the standalone films alone. I'm not going to count the series in that because I don't want to spoil nothing. But it was supposed to be the final one, and in my opinion, it should have been. Highlander 5, most well known as Highlander the Source. This movie is fucking terrible, and I bought it strictly for collection purposes. And I think the cover's very misleading. It makes it look a lot more Highlander-ish than what it actually is. Okay, so now we're at the part where I'm going to rank the films. So as you can see, we've got 7 things here, which means that there's going to be 7 things ranked. Alright, so basically purely on collection, at number 7 is Highlander 5. That is, yeah, it's garbage. I have only ever sat through it once, and it was the hardest fucking thing I've ever done. And the recreation of Princes of the Universe, shit. The only decent thing in this movie is the fact that Adrian Paul is in this movie. And that's not the best thing to say. Just saying, I love Adrian Paul. He's great in the Highlanders. And I've actually seen a little bit of his other work, and he has some pretty decent films. He's actually in an episode of Arrow. I don't watch the show, but I just read it. Yeah. But yeah, number 7, Highlander 5, or Highlander the Source. At number 6 is Highlander 2 The Quickening. Yep, the first sequel is somehow not the worst. I remember for so long before I discovered there was a Highlander 5, I thought they could not make a shitter movie than this. And at that time, I'd only ever seen 1, 2, and 4. And I decided then that The Quickening was the shittest one of them all. And I thought, there's no way they could ever make one worse than this. But the one thing that it has over Highlander 5 is it's so bad that it's good. Where Highlander 5 is just boring, this one has that ridiculousness that I am slightly entertained by it, and it actually has at least one decent fight scene in it. At number 5 would be Highlander Endgame. If it wasn't for the Donnie Yen fight scene, this movie probably... Actually, no, yeah, it would have been where it was. But if the movie was more like the Donnie Yen fight scene, it would be actually much higher. Because I think the first half of the Highlander Endgame is way better than the second half of it. And that is why it is at number 5. At number 4 is Highlander The Gathering on VHS. Just because it's one episode, so obviously it says a lot about the series because it must have got better. It is very cheesy, but just the whole thing of Connor and Duncan Biggin, the same thing together for the first time, was just really cool. It was a great introduction to Duncan MacLeod. And, you know, you got to meet characters such as Richie Ryan and Tessa, which became really good characters later on in the series. At number 3 is Highlander 3. A very good movie, of course. The story of the sorcerer, it's kick-ass. And in my opinion, of the Highlander movies, the thing that makes Highlander 3 so good is the end fight scene, because when Connor and Kane are fighting and you got Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood playing in the background, it just makes for a kick-ass fight scene. And that actually was an inspiring way of editing of the fight scene, because in the short film I did, Emo 3, I actually used Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood in the fight scene near the end. Alright, so we only got 2 left. We've got the Highlander series, and we've got the Highlander original film from 1986. At number 2 is the original Highlander movie. I know it might surprise a lot of you because everyone thinks it's the greatest thing to come out of it, but honestly, it's not. But that does not discount Highlander as a film, because it is one of my most favourite films of all time. Sean Connery is brilliant in it, and so is Christopher Lambert as Connor MacLeod. The Kurgan, in my opinion, is one of the best villains in film history. And it just makes for a great watch, and I watch it every year. And that is why the original Highlander is number 2. So the obvious one at number 1 is Highlander, the series, from 1992 to 1998, I think, or 1997. There was a great series. Now, what I'm going to do as a little bonus ranking is ranking the seasons. But first, let's get into why it was such a good series. In my opinion, of the whole Highlander franchise, the best villain actually came from the series. And Callus is the best villain that they've ever had. So if I had to rank the seasons, now, if I'm ranking the seasons individually, if I was breaking down the whole ranking, there are actually some of the seasons that would fall shorter than to the series. So, at the worst season, in my opinion, is season 6. The last season was the worst season for Highlander, and if I had to rank it amongst them, I would say it is below the first movie, it's below the second, or the third movie, and it's below the fourth movie. So, that would put it right in front of Highlander the Quickening, not counting the Gathering. My next on the ranking would probably be Season 2. Season 2 was a little, they were still trying to find their footing in Season 2. It wasn't until Season 3 where they really found their footing. But Season 2 did have a cool ending to Xavier St. Cloud, which was a great villain, played by the guy lead singer from Fine Young Cannibals. So Season 2 would be my number, 5 in my ranking. My number 4 in my ranking would be Season 1. It was hands down the cheesiest of all the seasons, and they just really, they hadn't found their footing yet, so it wasn't a solid story yet. But in my opinion, it is a great first season, and it has a lot of, I think of all the seasons, this is the easiest one to just pick an episode out of and watch, because as the seasons went on, they became more entwined with needing to watch the previous episode. Before, that was a really common thing in series. So that's why Season 1's my number 4. My number 3 would be Season 3. Actually, no, my number 3 would be Season 5. There are going to be spoilers ahead, by the way, because I'm doing minor spoiler talk. It's mostly for the last episode, which Duncan kills Richie. And it is a very sad moment when Richie dies in the series. At number 2 would be Season 3. Season 3 is also a very good season. That is the season where we're introduced to Callus, who is an excellent villain. And he's just very intimidating, and the fact that it takes him 4 or 5 episodes to die says enough about him as a villain. But my number 1 season, it has to be Season 4. So, in my opinion, Season 4 is the best thing to come out of the entire Highlander franchise. I'm not going to spoil anything on that season, because if you were going to watch one season, that's the one to watch. Alright, so I'm going to do one final thing of all of these Highlander films. Which ones are worth buying? Well, let's just start off with the easy part of which ones are not worth buying. First off, Highlander 5. Not worth buying. Next one, Highlander the Quickening. Highlander the Gathering is a standalone. Not really, but that's for different reasons. So, I'm going to be going by not my personal favourites, but what I think would be right for other people, so it's different to what I'm going to have ranked it on, because I was speaking from a Highlander fan standpoint. But if we're talking about someone that hasn't watched the Highlander films, these will be the 4 to get. But if you want to narrow it down more and say, alright, what if I only want to get 3 of them? Well, we'll take this one out. So, although it still works with my ranking, that is the ones that you get. Now, if I was to say what seasons you're going to get Season 1, get Season 3 and 4. So buy Season 1, 3 and 4, those will be the 3 seasons I would say to get. But these are the purchase worthies. So there you go, there is my Highlander collection. My name is JD, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and JD out.